Hello and welcome to the Delaware State Fire School Training Radio XTS 5000 instructions. So at the conclusion of this lesson, the students should be able to understand the need for all personnel on the drill grounds to have a radio and to understand that these radios are for training purposes only. They are not connected to any 800 megahertz trunked system that we currently use while on emergency responses. You should know how the radio functions, understand the zones and channels. You will also know and understand what channels will communicate with the Fire and Emergency Services APX 6000 radio. You'll know how to interpret call signs, how to activate and reset the emergency call features of the radio, how to understand and properly wear a radio with a radio strap with turnout gear, how to return the radio to chargers for the next use, and how to report a malfunction or a repair. So the school determined that the students really needed a realistic approach to training, in that almost all the students are going to have a radio on them when they are in the field on actual emergencies, and they should be familiar with the operation of the radio, what to listen for, and everything about it while they're in initial training. So one of the things that we looked at as a school was to put a radio in service that very closely mimics or is identical to the system that we currently use now with the APX 6000 radios. The problem with that was that in order to do this, it would cost upwards of $750,000, which was not feasible for this. So we found a way to program an XTS 5000 radio, which were recently pulled from service, to very closely mimic what we have in the field. So we also know that this radio is extremely durable. It has been tried and tested and passed with flying colors for years. And the other thing is that these radios were fairly inexpensive to put in service, so that allowed us to put 140 radios into service for a minimal cost. Also, if a radio becomes damaged or destroyed through use within the training grounds, we are able to either repair or replace that radio fairly easily at a very minimal cost. So these do have some pretty neat features on them, and they were programmed in a way that makes them sound very similar to the way that we use our APX radios. So they have 11 different zones in them. Each of them have 16 different channels. You can switch through the zones and the channels using either the channel knob or through the screen and selecting the zones. When you press the push to talk button or the PTT button, either on the radio or the lapel mic, it does make a beeping sound that is basically a mimicking communication with the radio system in real life. And the emergency activation button via the orange emergency buttons actually do work on these radios, and we'll go through that as well. So the radio beeps when you turn it on. It does have the front screen on it. It shows you the zone and the channel and the name of the portable as well. The home button that looks like the little house on the front of it works just as it does with the APX radio. When you press and hold it, it goes to zone 1, channel 1, and it has the channel announcement features in them similar to the APX radios for all channels. So the biggest thing to note with these radios are that even though that they say they're on a specific channel, such as Newcastle Dispatch or Sussex Fire 2 or Kent TAC 4, these radios are not connected to the system. You will not hear any radio traffic from those actual channels that are on the systems, and you cannot communicate with Kent Center or Newcastle Fire Board or Sussex Communications. they are only good from radio to radio, and they have a range of about 1 to 2 miles. So they work fine throughout the grounds, even of Dover, and especially with Newcastle and Sussex. We have tried these radios and tested these radios and found that we have very good reception on them. So we're going to go over as well some of the channels that work with the APX 6000 radios that we have on apparatus. And it's very important to note that only channels that work between the APX 6000 and the XTS 5000s, or the training radios, are channels that are non-repeated or that are talk around. So it's radio to radio only. So how we broke these up is that each radio has a unique ID. So when you turn the radio on, the radio will actually tell you what radio it is, and it's very similar to the label that's on it. So this radio here, if we were to turn it on, would say KCD Squad 1 Portable 1, and that will be displayed at all times unless it's receiving a transmission from another radio, in which case it will display what radio is transmitting. So for assignments, there are 30 radios at each division for the students. So there's squads 1 through squad 4, and each squad has between 7 and 8 radios assigned. Each division then also has 6 instructor radios, and they have 12 at Kent Division or Dover, just due to the sheer number of instructors and things. We do have 12 peak radios that are in Dover, and they are located in the computer lab, and then we also have 12 radios for the command simulation trailer that has recently been delivered. So the buttons on the top of the radio, so we have a couple different features with knobs and selectors. Obviously we have the on, off, and volume knob. We have the channel knob that goes all the way from channels 1 to 16. We have and this is really important, the transmit inhibitor selector. So it's located behind or under the channel receiver knob or selector knob. So if you can see here in the picture, the circle with the line through it would mean transmit inhibit, or it will not transmit out. And if you try to press the PTT button, it gives you what is known as the busy tone, and you will actually hear the busy tone here in the next video. So you want to have that on the clear circle. You have the ABC selector switch. So A and B on the selector switch do the same thing, which is the keypad on the front of the radio is unlocked, and then if it is in position C, it would be that the keypad is locked. So you can still change the channels if the keypad is locked. You can still transmit if the radio is locked. You can still activate the emergency button if the radio keypad is locked. And then obviously we have the orange emergency button, and we'll go over emergency activation features here shortly. So the buttons on the side of the radio, obviously the top button, or the purplish button, is the screen backlight that's just above the keypad. It actually turns the backlight on and off. The one raised nub, or the middle button on there, it is not programmed. The button just below that, or the two raised nub, is a squelch when pressed. So it's a momentary press button, and it'll squelch the radio or static it. And then you obviously have the push to talk button. So it is important to note that if a speaker mic is attached to this radio, that you can still use that button on the side of the radio. However, you need to talk into the radio and not the speaker mic. So on the front of the radio, you see that it says, it shows the zone that you're in. So NF would stand for Newcastle Fire. KM would stand for Kent Medical. SF stands for Sussex Fire. So there's 11 total zones within the radio, and we'll go over those here shortly. Know your radio. Your radio ID will be up on the screen if you're not receiving from another radio. Whoever's radio is transmitting will show on the screen until they stop transmitting. And then you have some options at the bottom of the screen, which are you can select via the 1, 2, or 3 buttons that are underneath of the screen. So the zones that we have in the radios are Zone 1 is the fire school, and it kind of mimics the XTS 5000 radios. And then you have Zone 2 is Newcastle Fire, Zone 3 is Kent Fire, Zone 4 is Sussex Fire. Then the next 3 are EMS zones. And then you have the interoperability channels, or 7 repeater or 7 direct, 8 repeater or 8 direct, and the 7 and 8 stands for the megahertz of the frequencies that are in the system. And then zones 12 through 15 are blank. So the home button, or the picture of the house, it can be used after the zone is selected, or you can press and hold to take you back to Zone 1, Channel 1, or it will announce the channel would be the statewide Delaware State Fire School. It's the same as the APX 6000 radios. The arrow buttons up, down, left, or right, it's used to select your zone or scroll through, and then the computer button is unprogrammed. So in order to select a different zone, you would press the zone button, or per the picture here, it would be button 1 with the 1 dot on it. Once you hit the zone button, then you would be able to use your arrows, the left or the right, to select your desired zone. And it'll go through all of those zones 1 through 15. And then you select what zone you are looking for, and then you're going to hit the home button momentarily, and it'll take you to that zone. Wherever the channel knob is situated will be the channel that you go to in the new zone. So if you're on channel 5, or if the channel selector is on 5 and you switch zones, you will be on channel 5 in the new zone. So you need to watch that, but it will announce to you what channel you go to. So this is the sound that the radio will make. So it has 2 push-to-talk buttons, one on the radio, one on the speaker mic. Remember that you cannot push the talk on the radio and talk into the speaker mic, because the microphone on the actual radio would be the one that's live. So keep in mind that you want to hold the mic about 10 to 12 inches away from your mouth, and you want to speak clearly and calmly. Again, in hearing that tone, and you may have to depress the push to talk button for a second or 2 in order for it to be able to transmit. So remember, if the ABC selector switch is moved into position C, that the front keypad will not work. Any of the buttons on the front keypad will not work. However, you can still use your push to talk, your transmit button, your emergency button, your volume button, and your channel selector will all still work. So the transmit inhibit, this is extremely important in case this gets hit accidentally. This feature was put into the radios to allow the students to hear what happens when there are no channels that are available on the trunk system. And we've all probably experienced that are experienced with these radios, that when you press the push to talk button and there's no channels available, you will get what's called a busy signal. It'll just simply go continue as a busy signal until you let go of that push to talk button and then try it again. So remember that the button is located just underneath the channel selector knob, and that you want it to be in the circle, or if you're looking at the radio, it would be off to the left. So it's important to note that when you do press the push to talk button and the radio is in the transmit inhibit position, clear transmission or clear transmit only will display on the radio, and the busy tone will emit from the radio. You would need to then switch the selector switch back to enable the radio to transmit. So we're going to play the video here of starting off with the transmit inhibit enabled, and then you'll see me actually move the button back to we're able to transmit, and it will transmit or put that data burst out that you heard earlier when you depress the push to talk button. So that was the busy signal. Now I'm going ahead and putting it to transmit, and now it's able to transmit. So this is the fleet map of the radio zones and channels. So you can see that here are the 11 zones within the XTS 5000 radio. It goes all the way from FD to 8D. And any of the radio channels that you see that are highlighted in green, which mainly are Talk 1 and Talk 2, which are in all the channels for the most part, channels 13 and 14, they will work in conjunction with the APX 6000 radios. So if you go to Talk 1 or Talk 2 on the APX 6000, and you're on Talk 1 or Talk 2 on the XTS 5000 radios, they will talk to each other. It's also important to note that in the interoperability channels, which is 7D, all of those channels will work in conjunction with the radio or the APX 6000 radios. The channels that are in yellow, they're actually repeated channels, but they're not trunked channels. So you can, if you are able to hit a repeater, say for instance in Dover, you may be able to use those interoperability channels in conjunction with talking between the XTS 5000 and the APX 6000 radio. So it is important to note that the radios for the Fire Score, the XTS radios, and the APX radios, they will talk to each other, but the location of those channels are not in the same location, such as Talk 1 and Talk 2 are not in every zone on the APX 6000 radios. So it's also important to note that if you are utilizing the XTS 5000 radio, that if you are on NDispatch, it will work in conjunction with any of the other places that NDispatch is listed. So if you're on Newcastle Medical on NDispatch and another radio is on Newcastle Fire Zone NDispatch, they still will talk to each other. So each radio has a unique identifier. It will display the alias or the pre-programmed name of the radio that's transmitting in all of the other radios that are on that frequency or on that channel. So they basically are broken down to KCD, NCD, and SCD. And then they are either Squad 1, Squad 4, Squad 2, and then whatever portable number there are. So every radio is unique. As soon as the transmitting radio stops transmitting or depresses the push to talk button, your radio will go back to saying what your actual radio is. So to activate the emergency button, it's a momentary press of the orange button. It will activate the emergency status on the radio. Your radio will display emergency on the top line and then alternate between that and the channel that you're on. All the other radios on the grounds that are on that channel will display EA receive, which stands for emergency activation, and then it displays the radio that the emergency button was activated from. So anybody else that is on the scene or on the drill grounds can see what radio specifically has signaled that they have an emergency activation. So as you heard there's an emergency activation that is coming on um, KCD Squad 1, Portable 1. Just because the emergency activation has been depressed, it doesn't mean that you can't talk on that frequency. You're still able to talk back and forth on the frequency, and the only that radio that hit the emergency button can reset the emergency button, and the only way that they can actually reset that emergency button is to press and hold their orange emergency button. Turning the radio off will actually not clear the emergency, and the radio will actually still stay on. So clearing the radio out, or clearing the emergency, this was a safety feature that was put into this at the request of the fire school senior instructors. So that way you can't turn the emergency activation off. So you actually have to press and hold that orange button in order to reset. So wearing your radio strap, all these radios will eventually have a radio strap that you can be used in conjunction with the XTS 5000 radio, because it is a little bit of a different dimension than the APX radios. So radio straps should be returned at the end of each class. Remember, it should go under your coat, over your suspenders and hood. The mic should be exposed out of the neck of the coat, and that means that the radio and the cord are protected against heat and adverse conditions. So you see here in these pictures, the radio is exposed in the back, but the strap and the cord is protected against heat, flame, and any type of snagging capabilities. So the radios have a designated charging station. All of the radios on the grounds have a sticker that is color-coded on the antenna, and that is depicted upon the squad or instructor radios. So that way it's a little bit easier to inventory. Also, all the chargers should have a sticker on them that correlates to the color on the antenna. So there should only be, for instance, if Squad 1's radios are orange antennas, then they should only be put back into the charger with the orange sticker in front of the slot. So if a radio malfunctions, if it's damaged, or repairs are needed, please let a senior instructor or the duty instructor know. We will be handling the repairs of these radios in-house. We do have things that are available with them. They should be tagged out of service, and it's not that big of a deal. These things will break periodically depending upon use. They are not brand new radios for the most part, and they're going to have issues because we intend to use them. So if we have a battery issue, if a battery's not lasting throughout the day, a radio battery can be swapped, but that battery needs to be given to a senior instructor or duty instructor, because we can either condition it or replace it. It is really important to note before you start your evolutions what channel you're going to be on. Who is going to be on what channel? If you have multiple things going, you may be using multiple channels. Make sure that EMS has both an XTS radio and an APX radio, because EMS, or the duty officer, should be able to call whatever county's dispatch center is and request an ambulance, or communicate with an ambulance, or obtain medical consultation if needed. So the only person that really needs an APX radio should be the duty instructor or the EMS duty instructor. So we went over a lot of information today, and I really hope that you learned something from this. These radios, if used properly, will prevent training scars and will certainly serve us well in making sure that everybody that's on the grounds has a radio and the ability to communicate with each other. But we're going to do that with keeping costs in mind, since we spent roughly about $7,000 on this project instead of $750,000. So I appreciate your time, and thank you.